So imagine a CEO, right? And he's setting up this succession test for his company, but it's just completely detached from the actual work they do.
Like a totally unhinged reality TV challenge.
Exactly. It's like he calls his top 3 people into a room and says, whoever can bring me back the absolute best prize from the wilderness gets the entire company. Go.
And of course, the supposedly smartest employees immediately just resort to backstabbing to win.
Yeah, which is the exact premise of this bizarre 19th century fairy tale we're doing a deep dive into today. It's called Der arme Müllerbursch und das Kätzchen.
The poor miller's boy and the little cat.
Right. And I mean, on the surface, the source material reads like this total psychedelic fever dream. You've got like trumpet-playing kittens and silver axes.
That sounds absurd, yeah.
But our mission today is to show you that if you look closer, it actually delivers this really profound, timeless breakdown of, why cynical shortcuts fail and the mechanics of outgrowing the very people who underestimate you.
The beauty of this text is really how it operates as a psychological map. I mean, it uses all this whimsical imagery to show us how different mindsets approach a challenge.
For sure.
And more importantly, the long-term consequences of those frameworks. We basically get to see the literal return on investment, the ROI of arrogance versus the ROI of earnestness.
Which is why I think this deep dive is going to resonate so deeply with you if you have ever felt like, the underdog at your job, or if you've taken an unconventional career path and had it mocked by your more traditional peers.
Absolutely.
Because the hero of this story, this young guy named Hans, he is the ultimate corporate underdog. So to understand why the quote-unquote smart strategy fails so spectacularly, we have to look at the inciting incident.
Right, the old miller wanting to retire.
Yeah, he wants to, as the text says, sit behind the stove. He has no family, so he tells his 3 apprentices to go out into the world, and whoever brings him back the best horse will inherit the grain mill.
But the catch is that the winner has to care for the old miller until he dies.
Right. And so these 3 apprentices, they include 2 older guys who consider themselves just incredibly savvy. And then there's the youngest, Hans, who is the Kleinknecht, which is basically the lowest-ranking chore boy.
The guy they all look down on?
Completely. The older 2 dismiss Hans completely. They actually tell him, don't even come with us because they've already decided he's just too simple-minded to ever succeed.
But Hans just tags along anyway.
He does. And then the betrayal happens. They sleep in a cave that first night, and the 2 older boys wait until Hans is asleep, sneak out, and just abandon him in the pitch black.
They leave him in a deeply dangerous situation just to eliminate the competition. I mean, they think they're being so clever.
Yeah, Hans wakes up the next morning, totally terrified, crying out, "Oh God, where am I?" before he physically has to climb his way out of this dark pit into the forest.
A brutal start.
It is. But okay, let's unpack this right here, because the Miller's test itself makes 0 sense to me. Well, if I am handing over a vital piece of infrastructure like a grain mill, I want someone who understands, mechanical engineering, right? Or crop yields.
Sure, practical skills.
Yeah. I do not want an equestrian. Inheriting a mill based on who finds the prettiest pony feels like a completely arbitrary metric.
It definitely seems arbitrary to our modern eyes.
Yeah.
But, you have to translate what a horse represented in that specific historical and cultural setting.
Okay, what did it represent?
A majestic horse wasn't just a pet, right? It was a proxy for ultimate capability. It was mobile capital.
Oh, interesting.
So the Miller is basically testing their ability to go out in the unknown and generate significant, tangible value from nothing.
So he's looking for resourcefulness.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But let me introduce a framework for how the older brothers react to this test, because it reminds me of algorithmic optimization gone wrong.
Oh, I like where this is going.
So in tech, if you give an AI a metric to maximize engagement, the AI won't necessarily make good content, right? It might just figure out that enraging people spikes the metric.
Right. It just games the system instead of solving the core problem.
Exactly. The older brothers aren't trying to solve the problem of finding a great horse. They're trying to game the metric by simply eliminating the only other player on the board.
That is a perfect analogy. They are completely suffering from a zero-sum mentality.
Break that down for us, because zero-sum gets thrown around a lot in business context, but what does it actually mean for these apprentices?
Well, a zero-sum mentality is basically the belief that the world has a fixed amount of success or resources. So for me to win a slice of the pie, I literally have to steal your slice.
So you can't just bake a bigger pie.
Right. The older boys don't believe they can simply go out and find a spectacular horse through hard work. They assume the only way to secure the mill is to make sure Hans fails.
Which is so toxic.
It really is.
Yes.
They rely on treachery and sabotage, assuming their cynical, quote-unquote, cleverness is a valid substitute for actual effort.
They think they've won on day one just by ditching the guy they thought was a joke anyway. It's like the ultimate arrogant middle management move.
Totally.
But this betrayal actually launches Hans into a completely different paradigm. He climbs out of this bleak reality of human betrayal and wanders into the forest where he encounters, and I love this, a small, highly colorful, or buntas kitten.
And this is where the story shifts from reality to something completely surreal.
Yeah, the cat speaks to him kindly. And she knows he wants a beautiful horse, so she offers him this bizarre contract. She says, serve me faithfully for 7 years, and I will give you the most beautiful horse you've ever seen.
And Hans just goes along with it.
He does. He thinks to himself, well, that is a strange cat, but he agrees anyway. And this brings us to this idea of radical acceptance, because the environment he enters next is just, it's wild.
It really is.
Yeah.
She takes him to an enchanted castle that is staffed entirely by kittens.
The details from the source text are incredible here. It's like borderline hallucinatory.
Oh, highly specific. Kittens sprinting happily up and down the stairs, running errands.
And the dinner entertainment? 3 kittens playing music, 1 on the bass, 1 on the violin, and a third blowing into a trumpet with its cheeks puffed out as far as they can go.
I love the trumpet kitten.
Me too. And then Hans refuses to dance with a pussycat, so they just put him to bed. 1 kitten takes off his shoes, 1 removes his stockings, 1 blows out the candle.
It's basically a luxury feline wellness retreat.
It is. And the next morning they dress him, and 1 kitten literally dries his washed face by wiping it with its tail.
Which Hans just casually notes is quite soft.
Yeah. I'm honestly torn on whether that specific detail is delightful or slightly horrifying, having my face dried by a cat's tail.
It's definitely a massive departure from the dark, cold cave he just woke up in, that's for sure.
Right. It sounds like an acid trip, but let's ground this in reality for a second, because I think of this like joining a radically innovative startup, or maybe entering a totally foreign corporate culture.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it.
Yeah, like when you step into a new paradigm, their internal rules often look completely insane to outsiders. You walk in and there are, beanbag chairs, people communicating entirely in memes, and maybe a literal trumpet-playing kitten equivalent.
Right. And the older, smarter apprentices would have taken one look at this castle, declared the whole thing ridiculous, and just walked away.
Exactly.
Because the cynic demands to see the ROI, the horse up front, before they commit to anything that challenges their worldview. They're just too guarded to engage with the absurd.
But Hans succeeds here because he employs that radical acceptance. It reminds me of the yes and rule in improv comedy.
Exactly. You don't block the reality your partner sets up, even if it's weird. You just accept it and build on it.
Right. Hans doesn't panic. He doesn't interrogate the physics of a cat playing a trumpet.
Which is a profound superpower, honestly. By suspending his disbelief, he doesn't foreclose on the opportunity. Cynicism often masquerades as intelligence.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, we're taught that poking holes in a new idea makes us look smart. But cynicism actually kills innovation in its earliest stages because it just refuses to engage with the unknown.
That is such a good point.
Hans's lack of cynicism, his earnest openness to the weird, is exactly why he accesses resources that the guarded, smart boys never will.
But accepting the absurdity of the castle is really only half the battle, because the cat doesn't just let him lounge around getting his face dried by fluffy tails all day.
No, she puts him to work.
She does. And this shifts us into analyzing the dignity of labor, which is where the story gets deeply symbolic. So the cat gives him a daily chore of chopping wood, but instead of an iron axe, she gives him a silver axe.
And silver wedges, a silver saw, and a copper mallet.
Right. And later she tasks him with mowing a meadow, but he has to use a silver scythe and a gold whetstone. And finally, he has to build a small house using silver timber, a silver carpenter's axe, and a silver square.
The juxtaposition there is so striking. You have this grueling blue-collar agricultural work being performed with the materials of kings and emperors.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though, because let me play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't this just a classic fairy tale flex? Like, maybe the author is just trying to show that this cat is so insanely wealthy she uses jewelry for farm equipment. How do we know this is a deeper metaphor and not just flashy wealth?
We know because of the actual physical properties of those metals.
Right, because silver is soft.
Exactly. From a practical standpoint, silver and gold are terrible materials for heavy tools. They are incredibly soft.
If you take a solid silver axe to a hardwood tree,
The blade is going to dent, deform, and dull almost immediately. And if you drag a gold whetstone across a scythe, you will literally just smear gold residue onto the blade.
right, so the tools are functionally useless in the real world.
Precisely. Which means their presence in the story is purely symbolic. The narrative is deliberately elevating Hans's humble labor.
Oh, I see.
By casting his tools in precious metals, it's dignifying the hard work of this supposedly simple boy. The cynical world views manual labor as a lowly means to an end, something to escape. But the magical world views this labor as inherently valuable, even sacred.
But, you know, if you're listening to this right now, you might be thinking, sure, in a fairy tale, chopping wood with silver yields a golden castle. But in the real corporate world, doing quiet grunt work and believing it's sacred just gets you exploited.
It's a valid concern.
Right. You do the work, and the loud guy who takes the credit gets the promotion.
Yeah.
So how does this story reconcile with the very real threat of office politics?
That is a crucial distinction to make here. Hans isn't practicing blind subservience. He isn't working to make a toxic boss richer while he starves.
He has a clear contract.
Exactly. He entered into a mutual contract with the cat, and he is treated with immense respect. He's fed well, housed beautifully, given exquisite tools. He's building his own mastery.
And when you're deeply engaged in work that respects you, you achieve this state of flow. The story explicitly mentions a time distortion, doesn't it?
It does. The text notes that because of this work, the 7 years pass for him as if they were only half a year.
Wow.
That is a textbook description of a flow state. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi defined flow as this state of complete immersion where the ego falls away and time distorts.
Hans wasn't watching the clock or agonizing over office politics because he was entirely absorbed in the craft itself.
Right. He wasn't trying to find a shortcut to the reward.
Yeah.
The older boys wanted the reward without the work. Hans immersed himself in the work, and the time just vanished.
Which brings us to the ROI of that earnestness and the massive contrast when he finally returns home. So Hans finishes the silver house. The cat shows him 12 gleaming, magnificent horses inside.
But she tells him to go home without one.
Yeah. She promises she'll bring his horse to the mill in 3 days. And to make matters worse, she sends him back in the exact same ragged tunic he arrived in 7 years ago, which is now comically short and tattered on him.
He walks back to the mill looking like a complete vagabond.
And when he arrives, the 2 older, smart apprentices are already there. So let's talk about what their cynical, shortcut-driven strategy actually produced. What did they bring back?
Well, one brought a blind horse and the other brought a lame horse.
It's just wild.
It's a devastating critique of the zero-sum mindset. They thought they were so clever by leaving Hans in the cave, but their treachery just yielded broken, defective results.
They tried to cheat the metric.
Exactly, and they ended up with prizes that are fundamentally worthless for any practical application at a mill.
They bring back literal garbage, and yet when Hans shows up empty-handed in his shrunken rags, they still have the nerve to mock him.
Oh, they are ruthless.
They laugh and say, "Oh, Hans, where are you going to get a horse from? That'll be something to see." Why on earth are they still punching down when they have so clearly failed themselves?
It is a textbook defense mechanism. I mean, deep down, they know they've failed. They know a blind horse won't win them the mill.
Right.
But their entire identity is wrapped up in being superior to Hans. Faced with their own undeniable inadequacy, they attack him to protect their fragile egos. If they can still make Hans the joke, they don't have to face their own incompetence.
Wow. And the old miller enables this toxic dynamic. He refuses to let Hans sit at the dinner table because his clothes are torn. The other boys refuse to give him a bed, forcing him to sleep outside in the goose pen on hard straw.
After 7 years of respectful, dignified labor, he's right back at the bottom of the hierarchy, being treated like dirt.
But notice Hans's reaction, or rather, his lack of reaction. He doesn't scream at them. He doesn't brag that he has 12 gleaming horses coming to prove them wrong.
He quietly endures the humiliation because he has absolute faith in the promise made to him.
Right. He knows what he's built, so he doesn't need to engage in their petty status games. And that patience pays off in the most spectacular way imaginable.
The climax of the story.
Yes. 3 days later, a massive coach arrives at the mill. It is pulled by 6 gleaming horses, with a servant leading a magnificent 7th horse alongside it. And stepping out of this coach is a gorgeous princess who is the true form of the colorful kitten.
And she marches right past the older boys and demands to know where the Kleinneck, the lowly apprentice, is.
The miller is deeply embarrassed and admits Hans is out in the goose pen, and the princess immediately orders her servants to fetch him, wash him, and dress him in royal garments.
The text notes that when they're finished, no king could look more handsome.
So what does this all mean? The vindication here is incredible. The princess inspects the pathetic blind and lame horses brought by the older boys, and then presents the 7th gleaming horse to Hans.
And the old miller instantly declares Hans the winner. He says, "The mill must be his."
But this is my absolute favorite part of the story. Because Hans doesn't just take the mill and fire the older brothers. The princess executes the ultimate paradigm shift. She tells the miller, "There is the horse, but you can keep your mill."
It is such a brilliant, subversive resolution. The older apprentices thought the mill was the center of the universe. They were willing to betray their friend for it.
And the old miller thought his mill was so valuable he could pit his employees against each other in this cruel game.
But Hans leveled up so hard that the original prize just became completely irrelevant.
Yes.
By putting in the time, by committing to the bizarre, unglamorous work with genuine dedication, Hans completely outgrew the sandbox they were all playing in.
The ultimate flex.
Right. She takes Hans in her coach, and they drive back to the small silver house he built. Except, it's no longer a small house. It is transformed into a massive castle made entirely of silver and gold.
They marry, and he is rich for the rest of his life. He literally built his own reward with his own silver tools while the cynics were out searching for cheap shortcuts.
And the story ends with a very direct moral written right into the text. Let no one say that whoever is simple-minded cannot become something great.
The author is actively reclaiming the word simple.
Exactly. In this context, simple doesn't mean unintelligent or incapable. It means earnest. It means sincere.
Lacking that toxic cynicism.
Right, lacking the zero-sum paranoia that destroyed the older apprentices. It means you aren't constantly trying to game the system at the expense of others.
And for you, the listener, the takeaway here is incredibly practical, even if you never encounter a trumpet-playing kitten in your office. Consistent, dedicated effort, even when your tasks seem totally bizarre to the people around you, or even when you feel like you've been banished to your company's version of a goose pen, it compounds over time.
Sincere mastery builds into spectacular, unexpected success that the cynics will just never understand.
Because they were too busy looking for the cheat code to ever actually play the game, they end up with the lame horse, and Hans builds a golden castle.
It all comes back to the alchemy of sincere effort.
Which brings us back to that reality TV succession challenge we talked about at the very beginning. The winner wasn't the one who played the best politics. The winner was the one who abandoned the game entirely to go chop wood with a silver axe.
A great way to put it.
And that raises a final question we want to leave you with today. The text explicitly tells us that the 7 years felt like only 6 months for Hans because he was so completely, deeply engaged in his bizarre labor. So what is the silver axe in your own life?
What is the work you do that makes time simply disappear?
And are you willing to look a little foolish to the cynics around you while you master it? Because if you are, you might just find that you outgrow the very prize you thought you were fighting for. You might just end up building your own castle. Keep chopping, everyone. See you next time on The Deep Dive.